I'm Hugh Stewart. This is News for Scotland on the Scotland Channel. An influential Labour think tank which helped Keir Starmer into power after purging the party of Jeremy Corbyn has raked in more than £1 million from donors linked to private healthcare since last July's general election. Labour Together has been given almost £2.2 million from mostly wealthy corporate donors in that time, according to Electoral Commission data. That's over a third of all cash donations to regulated donees since the election, with the top 13 donations all going to Labour Together. The campaign group Transparency International has now called for an urgent cap on individual donations to stop political influence being concentrated among the super rich, like hedge fund billionaire Martin Taylor, who has made several donations totalling £1 million to Labour Together. It brings the total amount donated by Taylor to Labour politicians and Labour Together to over £6 million since April 2020, when Starmer won the party's leadership contest. The independent journalists cooperative The Ferret revealed that Taylor's company, Craik Asset Management, had bought more than £8 million worth of shares in the private healthcare firm HCA Healthcare. HCA claims to be the largest private healthcare provider in the world and one of the leading private healthcare providers in the UK. The firm's Scottish clinic in Glasgow charges £90 for a 15-minute GP consultation. Juliet Swan, Nations and Regions Policy Manager at Transparency International UK, said that such donations inevitably raise questions about what donors expected in return. She called for caps on individual donations to stop political influence being concentrated among the super rich. Without reform, the public will continue to see democracy as something that serves wealthy donors rather than ordinary voters, she said. A Scotland Channel documentary exposes the threat to Scotland's NHS from creeping privatisation of the NHS in England. Condition Critical: Saving Scotland's NHS is available to watch now on the Scotland Channel at youtube.com/the Scotland Channel/videos. And now at Hamilton by-election next week is a two-horse race. While Hamilton in North Lanarkshire has been a bellwether constituency since Winnie Ewing dramatically won it for the SNP in 1967. Then in 2023, Michael Shanks for Labour took it from the SNP, holding the seat in the following year's general election when the SNP lost most of their Westminster MPs. Now in the Scottish Parliament by-election for Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse, it looks as if another dramatic swing is about to hit Scottish politics. The new Reform UK party, which got 403 votes there in 2023, are hoping to come second to the SNP in what looks like a two-horse race. Labour, at the time of recording this show, decided not to put their candidate up for a televised debate on Monday, claiming that their candidate would be out chapping doors instead. The SNP contender, Councillor Katie Loudon, mocked Labour's excuse, saying the candidate would have to be chapping on voters' doors at 10:30 at night. It's been suggested that the Labour candidate, Davy Russell, might not be Scotland's best debater. Reform videos on X recently have been playing on the theme that the Labour candidate has gone missing. So if there's really only two parties in it, at least voters in the constituency will have a clear choice. Nigel Farage's Reform Party, the successor to UKIP and the Brexit Party, are of course anti-Europe, while the SNP policy is for Scotland to be a full member of the European Union, thus having access to its huge single market. Reform UK are also anti-immigration and defend what they call British culture, identity and values. The Scottish Government position on immigration is that new Scots add to our culture and economy, pointing out that Scotland's population urgently needs a boost. Reform are a right-wing party on those measures, but as populists, they also aim to attract typical Labour or SNP voters with proposals such as cutting income tax for working people and restoring the winter fuel allowance. The Scottish website is very thin on policy for Scotland, so will they pick up votes just because people are scunnered by the big parties? Well, we'll find out next week. The election is on Thursday the 5th. And now more on that by-election in Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse. The Reform UK party have been accused of racism in an advert where they selectively quoted UK Labour's Scottish leader from a speech he made 3 years ago. The reform video, which went out on Facebook last week, had a caption reading, "Angus Sarwar says he will prioritise the Pakistani community," based on a talk which Mr. Sarwar gave in 2022, urging people from Pakistani and South Asian backgrounds to get involved in politics. Sarwar did not in fact say that any community was to be prioritised. Now, the SNP's chief executive, Carol Beattie, has written to Meta, the company which owns Facebook, suggesting that the video, which would provoke division and stir racial resentment, should be taken off the platform. In her letter, Beattie wrote, "The video strongly criticises Scottish Labour leader Angus Sarwar for promoting the inclusion of the Pakistani community in Scotland and portrays this kind of engagement with the Pakistani community in Scotland in a disparaging and negative manner." She went on, "I strongly believe this content crosses the line into race baiting and scapegoating, framing support for a long-established ethnic minority community as a threat to the living standards of people in Scotland." For their part, Reform UK said they were simply advertising Angus Sarwar's own words. Last week, Sarwar said that Reform UK were chancellors who want to play on people's fears. He continued, "They want to try and question my identity, my belonging, and my loyalty to the country in which I was born, the country with which I identify, the country in which my children were born." Mr. Sarwar described himself as a proud Scot who, as a qualified dentist, worked in the Scottish NHS before going into politics. Scottish wind farms could be priced out of their own market. Scottish Renewables, the industry body representing our zero-carbon electricity generators, has warned that the UK's out-of-date grid connection charges risk forcing Scottish wind farms out of the market. Scottish wind power generators have to pay millions to be connected to the UK's electricity grid. This month, a report from 3 green energy generators, Ocean Power, Northland Power and West of Orkney Wind Farm, says these high connection charges will act as a barrier to future investment in Scotland, although this is the ideal location for wind generation. As Scotland aims to build on our already successful green energy economy, this system conflicts with national goals for clean power and lower bills. The report states that Scotland is being put at a significant disadvantage and existing projects are seeing their value eroded, which will only worsen as Northern Scotland transmission charges are expected to double in the next 5 years. These signals are severely harming the Scottish market. The report points out that development of Scottish offshore wind is crucial to reaching the UK's decarbonisation goals. Ofgem is currently looking at changes to the outdated system of national grid connection charges, and Scottish Renewables urges them to redesign the system completely so that Scottish generators aren't priced out of the market and so that new generators aren't driven away from what should be a huge opportunity for Scotland to produce plentiful energy, bring down prices and move towards decarbonising the economy. The report tells us that under the present pricing system, a typical Scottish 1 gigawatt project, that's enough to power about 700,000 homes, would face costs of £1 billion more than the equivalent project in southern England over the project lifetime. The Scottish Government has no control over the energy market, as that is reserved to the UK Government. Keir Starmer has been accused of ignoring warnings from his own nuclear safety watchdog in a bid to boost his nuclear power plans. This includes foisting mini nuclear plants on Scotland, which will have far laxer safety standards and are uneconomical, based on the experience of a handful of other plants elsewhere in the world. In a document released under the Freedom of Information Act, the UK's Office for Nuclear Regulation told the government that claims about delays to nuclear power made in an initial draft of an announcement by Starmer were not true. However, the claims were repeated in the Prime Minister's final announcement in February, which said that the Labour government would rip up the rules to fire up nuclear power. Campaigners say they were appalled by Starmer's cynical and unprofessional approach, accusing him of ignorant prejudice and borrowing language from the right-wing press, which has also been, pressure groups have also been pressing for more nuclear power plants to be built here. They warned that weakening the regulation of nuclear plants would put public safety at risk. The draft release also quoted the Energy Secretary Ed Miliband promising that nuclear power would be built by unionised British workers, but that was changed in the published version to say that nuclear power would create thousands of skilled jobs. The Labour government in London under Starmer and Miliband have become enthusiastic cheerleaders for nuclear power. Ministers are keen to kickstart a new nuclear building programme to, as they put it, grow our economy and deliver cleaner, more affordable energy. It's a move backed by Sarwar MSP, English Labour's leader in Scotland. Both Labour and the Conservatives have been piling pressure on the SNP's Scottish government to abandon its long-held opposition to the building of any new nuclear plant here. The Office for Nuclear Regulations, that's the ONR, was asked to comment on the draft government press release announcing a new task force to speed up the regulation of nuclear power. In response to a Freedom of Information request by the non-profit journalist cooperative The Ferret, the ONR released a copy of the draft with its annotations making 4 suggested corrections, but none of those corrections were implemented when Starmer made his announcement on February 6th, promising to, as he put it, put Britain back in the global race for nuclear energy. The draft release stated that 3 European regulatory regimes had reached different assessments of design of the 2 reactors being built at Hinkley Point C in Somerset, and these are leading to delays and increased costs. The ONR pointed out that this was not accurate, as it had refuted such claims before. Our feeling is that linking regulatory factors to the increasing Hinkley Point C costs and timeframes isn't true, and the sentence doesn't stand up, it said. The ONR also suggested that the new task force should not look at the approval of new nuclear designs as suggested in the draft, but their deployment. Delays have been caused by construction problems and not safety regulation, it argued. The energy firm EDF predicted in 2007 that electricity from Hinkley C would be operational by 2017. It has since been repeatedly delayed, with EDF saying in January 24 that the station might not be finished until 2031. The estimated total cost of building the plant has risen from £18 billion in 2016 to £35 billion in 2024, and this could rise to £46 billion when inflation is taken into account. According to the ONR, its assessment of the Hinkley reactor design was completed in 2012, but construction did not start until 2017. Are Edinburgh Castle's redcoats on a sugly peg? There have been calls for an urgent update on the deeply offensive name of the Edinburgh Castle's Redcoat Café, after a pledge to review the name was made over a year ago. The Redcoat Café found itself at the centre of a storm earlier last year when it reopened after a refurb, and it was given a new name which, said one objector, was a symbol of colonisation. The name change led to a petition calling for the deeply offensive name to be changed. Historic Environment Scotland pledged to review the name of the cafe as well as the name of the Jacobite function room, but has yet to do so. One critic, independence activist Sean Clerkin, said that calling a cafe on one of Scotland's most iconic landmarks, the Redcoat Café, is a symbol of colonisation. It would be like opening a cafe in Dublin and calling it a Black and Tan Cafe. It's the same thing. An HES spokesperson said, the review is part of the wider visitor experience plans for Edinburgh Castle. This work is ongoing and a decision on names will be taken in line with this in due course. Sean Clerkin meanwhile said they hoped the controversy would die down. They were probably just planning to keep the name and let everything quietly fade away. However, he called for visitors to boycott the cafe until the offensive name was changed. The Scottish Government has been ordered to release details of correspondence relating to a secret meeting between External Affairs Secretary Angus Robertson and the Israeli ambassador to the UK. Robertson apologised after being criticised over a meeting he had last August with Daniela Grudske-Eckstein. Critics accused Robertson of trying to normalise relations with Israel and called for him to be suspended. Independent non-profit news cooperative The Ferret submitted a Freedom of Information request to the Scottish Government asking to see correspondence about the meeting with Grudske-Eckstein. Officials initially refused to disclose any information. When the Ferret appealed against the decision, the government told the Information Commissioner, David Hamilton, that it could be anti-Semitic to release logistical information about the meeting following advice from an independent official charged with overseeing transparency laws. The government stated that it had to be mindful of the need to treat Israel as it would any other democratic nation, in line with the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, that's the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. Ignoring Israel's wishes in circumstances where other countries' wishes would have been respected could be considered an anti-Semitic action under the IHRA definition, it claimed. But the Scottish Government has breached transparency laws, said Mr Hamilton, as a majority of the information withheld by the Scottish Government had no inherent sensitivity. Dismissing almost all of the government's objections, Mr Hamilton ordered that the withheld correspondence be released within 6 weeks. The IHRA definition has been accepted by 45 countries, including the UK. The Scottish Government adopted the definition themselves in 2017, but critics have claimed it conflates criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism as a means of shutting down criticism of Israel's actions in Gaza and the West Bank. In 2023, more than 100 Israeli and international civil society organisations asked the UN to reject the definition, arguing that it's been misused to protect Israel from legitimate criticism. Scotland's controversial weapons manufacturing sector regularly lobbies Scottish ministers and MSPs. The arms sector has had 99 meetings with MSPs since the UK general election last year. 33,500 people are employed by Scotland's defence sector, which has become an urgent priority for the UK government due to the perceived threat from Russia. Defence is reserved to Westminster, and the Ministry of Defence is responsible for defence contracts, but the Scottish Government can award grants to arms firms for projects in Scotland via its business agency, Scottish Enterprise. ADS, that's the Aerospace Defence Security and Space trade body representing the arms industry, has 1,400 members in the UK. Out of 19 organisations that forms ADS Scotland's Council, 13 are headquartered abroad or in England. In Scotland, the Council also includes 3 academic institutions, St Andrews, Strathclyde Universities and Ayrshire College. 5 private firms who employ around 3/4 of the arms workforce in the arms industry had thousands of secret meetings with the UK government between 2011 and 2020. According to a Ferret investigation, access given to Westminster by BEE Systems, Leonardo, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, which is now RTX, and Thales amounted to 2,217 meetings with the UK government, including 40 when representatives of the Prime Minister's office were present. These meetings lasted a total of 58 hours. They also found that 87 people who worked for one of these 5 firms also worked for the UK government, making them so-called revolving door employees. In Scotland, the arms firms which exert influence here are Leonardo, RTX, Thales, Lockheed Martin and BAE Systems, which operates 2 shipyards at Govan and Scotstoun, as well as operations in Highlands and Bishopton and Babcock International. A former Israeli soldier, now living in the Highlands, has accused Keir Starmer, a former human rights lawyer, of completely spitting in the face of international law in his continuing support for Israel. The Labour UK government continues to supply arms and logistical support to Israel, which has slaughtered tens of thousands of unarmed civilians, including over 14,000 children, in Gaza since October 23. Abigail Aberbanel, who was born in Tel Aviv but now lives near Inverness, says that there's a powerful cult-like indoctrination against the Palestinian people in Israel, which she only discovered and unlearned after leaving the country. She says she's not denying at all that Jews were victims throughout history. Her grandparents are Holocaust survivors, but she also realises that having been victims doesn't give us the right to erase the entire civilization, in her words. Now a pro-Palestinian activist, Abigail describes the UK continuing support for Israel as beyond disgusting. She added that the Starmer government is complicit in genocide. We bring you the news that the mainstream media doesn't. When it comes to Scotland, the Anglo-British media regularly omits or distorts news stories about Scotland that the British state finds uncomfortable, such as the decolonisation bid at the United Nations, arguably the most important news story to come out of Scotland for over 300 years. We feel that Scots deserve to know the truth about their own country, which is why News for Scotland and the Scotland Channel were started. If you support truly independent Scottish media, then please support us by sharing our content and telling friends, family and work colleagues about us. We also make a range of films which showcase Scotland, its people, achievements and culture. Discover a Scotland you won't see on mainstream media. Discover the Scotland channel on youtube.com/the Scotland channel/videos, or visit our website for more details about forthcoming films. That's www.thescotlandchannel.tv, #coming soon. And if you've any news for me, why not write to News4Scotland, that's N4S, @mail.com. I'll be happy to hear from you. That winds up our stories for this week. Join us again on the Scotland Channel every Friday night from 7 p.m. Don't forget, once released, you can view all our shows anytime on the Scotland Channel. Support us by linking, sharing and subscribing to our YouTube page. Thanks for watching.